Celtic, latest injury, scare points to a truth nobody wanted to face. What if the moment that changed the tone of the night happened long before anyone realized? The Boston Celtics needed steadiness after a tense week, and they delivered just enough of it against the Orlando Magic. They moved with purpose, used quicker lineup, and dictated the rhythm for long stretches. Still, one scene refused to fade after the final whistle. Neemias Queta turned his left ankle early in the first quarter and never returned. At the time, the update sounded harmless, but the silence that followed opened the door to a bigger worry. And with no official timeline yet, the question growing in the mind of every Celtics fan is simple: what now? The unexpected part is how fast Queta climbed into a place of importance. He was not expected to become a stabilizing force this soon, yet Boston quietly leaned on him in ways very few predicted. His absence, even if minor, suddenly feels larger than any box score could show. Why Queta became a quiet anchor in Boston. The Celtics entered the season asking new faces to learn on the fly after losing key veterans from the frontcourt. Through all that rebuilding of roles, Queta provided something this roster did not have enough of: daily reliability. The numbers paint the picture with no room for debate. He averages 9.3 points and 7.9 rebounds in nearly 25 minutes. His efficiency sits above 61%. His defensive rating is among the best in the league. When he leaves the floor, Boston's rebounding drops sharply, and the structure of their defense loses balance. Nothing about his game is loud, yet every part of it lifts the team. He protects the rim, finishes inside, cleans the glass, and makes quicker decisions in the short roll. His assist rate is at a personal best. You do not need flair when impact speaks for you. The schedule ahead will not be so kind. Detroit, Minnesota, Cleveland, and New York rely on power, paint pressure, and physicality. They bring multiple bigs to test your toughness every possession. This is where Queta's rise becomes impossible to ignore. Boston plays its cleanest basketball with him on the court. The rim protection, the communication, the vertical spacing, the rebound, every one of those things unlocks smoother possessions on both ends. Waiting on the Celtics medical staff. The evaluation over the next few days will shape the next chapter. The initial label gave a hint of optimism, and nothing right now points to a long absence. Boston will act with caution, and if recovery demands a short pause, they will rely on Minot, Garza, Boucher, Xavier Tillman, and possibly Amari Williams to protect the interior. Still, this moment exposed something deeper about the roster. Queta used this season to become more than a temporary solution. He became part of the team's structure, and that shift does not happen by accident. His injury may not be severe, but the reaction around it revealed how quickly he turned himself into a trusted piece. What happens when a team that spent the entire summer reorganized suddenly finds itself one move away from changing the season? That is the question surrounding the Boston Celtics right now, and everything points to a moment where patience and pressure are about to collide. The Celtics are still adjusting to life without Jason Tatum, and the early part of the campaign has been a test in flexibility. December is approaching, and with it comes a stretch when teams decide who they want to be. Once most of the league becomes trade eligible on December 15, Boston is expected to step into the conversation more aggressively than usual, and honestly, it feels like they need to. Analysts already label the Celtics as one of the most opportunistic groups in the league. They study every possibility, even while carrying financial limits that force them to be sharper than ever. It is a very different picture from previous years when the team relied heavily on familiar pieces and familiar patterns. Now, everything seems to revolve around one name: Anthony Simons. He arrived with the reputation of a scorer who could ease the load on Jaylen Brown and Derek White. But his first month in Boston has been inconsistent. Some nights, he looks like the offensive spark the team has been missing. Other nights, he disappears so quickly that Joe Mazzulla closes games without him. 13 points per night, solid shooting percentage, flashes of playmaking, but also long stretches where the ball stops and the rhythm fades. That inconsistency is not sustainable, and the Celtics know it. And that is exactly why his contract has become just as important as his production. Simons carries an expiring deal worth $27 million, the one real mid-season salary slot Boston can use without damaging the core of the team. Financially, this is the piece that opens every door. If the Celtics want flexibility, if they want to adjust the roster, if they want to prepare for April and May, this is the way to do it. Some trade concepts even involve 3 teams, showing how Boston could navigate the middle tier of the market. Veteran wings, cost control, defensive balance, all appearing as possible outcomes. Not superstar moves, but smart adjustments that could reshape the season without breaking the future. What matters most is not the names mentioned these frameworks. What matters is the direction. If Boston decides to act, Simons is the pressure point. If they stay patient, he is the experiment that continues until the results finally stabilize. For now, Joe Mazzulla keeps things simple. Simons gets early minutes. If the attack flows, he stays. If the spacing breaks and the defense suffers, the rotation tightens. It is a fair approach, one that keeps the team's identity intact while still giving Simons a chance to prove his value. But the clock is ticking, and everyone feels it. And that leads to the real question. December 15 is coming. The Celtics have a strong roster, a rare expiring contract, and a clear path to improve if they choose to act. Simons can secure his place, or he can become the key that unlocks the next move. If so, what if the Boston Celtics are sitting on a deadline that could change their entire playoff path? And almost no one is talking about it yet. The timing, the roster needs, and one name in Chicago are all starting to point in the same direction. The Celtics have steadied themselves after a rough start. They rediscovered their identity, even while missing Jason Tatum and struggling to get steady production from their big. But as confident as this team sounds in public, there is a quiet truth behind the scene. If they want to be taken seriously as a postseason threat, reinforcing the front court is not optional. It is urgent, and that brings us straight to the calendar. December 15. The date when most of the league becomes trade eligible. The date when front offices stop guessing and finally decide whether they are chasing wins or preparing to reboot. It is the moment when Boston can go from waiting to acting. It is also the moment when one target becomes more realistic than ever: Nikola Vucevic. The Chicago Bulls have tried to keep up the appearance of stability, but Vucevic has not hidden his frustration anymore. He ignored his teammates during a celebration against Washington. He openly questioned the level of play. He's on an expiring contract, and nothing about his body language suggests he wants another year in Chicago. That is exactly why Boston should move fast. The structure is simple. Anthony Simon and his expiring deal, a second-round pick. And suddenly, the Celtics get a proven big who can score, shoot, rebound, and keep the offense moving without clogging the lane. Vucevic is 35, yes, but he is still putting up almost 17 points and 10 rebounds with strong percentage from everywhere on the floor. That kind of versatility has real value for a team that often needs a steady presence in the half-court. He's not Al Horford on defense, but he gives Boston something different: space, touch, playmaking from the post, and real rebound, something that can make or break a playoff series. Add to that the possibility that he might accept a smaller deal to stay with a contender once Tatum returns, and you start to see why the Celtics cannot afford to stay passive. Meanwhile, the Bulls would gain something they desperately need: a young scorer who is not even in his prime, someone who could grow next to Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis. A fresh direction for a franchise that has been stuck in the same loop for years. What would you do if the face of your franchise admitted he once planned to walk away? That is the conversation Boston fans woke up to after Jaylen Brown revealed something few expected him to say out loud. For a team built on stability, built on identity, and built on the partnership between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, hearing that one of them almost left changes the way everything feels. Boston's recent success tells the story of a franchise that found its rhythm, even without Tatum on the floor. Yet behind the win, behind the years of deep playoff run, there was a tension most never fully saw. Brown finally put words to, opening the door to a chapter Boston thought was long buried. He admitted that at different points in his career, especially when trade rumors became routine, he was ready to leave, ready to bet on himself somewhere else, ready to chase a bigger role, more touches, more freedom. And honestly, who could blame him after watching his name get tossed around the league year after year? But then something unexpected happened. One conversation changed everything. Jaylen revealed that Tracy McGrady, one of his childhood idols, told him something he never thought he would hear. McGrady, a player who famously left Toronto to chase stardom on his own terms, looked Brown in the eyes and said the exact opposite of what Brown assumed he would say. T-Mac was like, "Stay, bro. Trust me, if you have the chance to win, win." It was direct, it was simple, and it hit Brown harder than he expected. Hearing that from someone who actually lived the path he was considering forced him to rethink everything. That advice made his 2024 championship run feel even more meaningful, knowing how close he came to experiencing that moment in a different jersey. Still, Brown did not hide the reasons why he almost walked away. He said openly that there were stretches in Boston that felt restricted, moments when he believed he could be more somewhere else. Moments when he questioned whether playing next to Tatum was holding him back from becoming the scoring force he believes he can be. Those thoughts were real. Those frustrations were real. And they can always come back. This is where the larger conversation begins, because the league today is not the league that kept legends in one uniform for 20 years. Stars move, cores split, teams shake things up fast. And Boston, as strong as it is not immune to the pressure that comes with salaries, role, and expectation. The idea of Brown staying in Boston forever sounds great on paper, but it is far from guaranteed. The team needs to stay competitive. Role players must continue to evolve. The front office must keep building around the Tatum-Brown pairing instead of letting it slowly drift apart. And at the same time, Brown must keep feeling that he is valued, trusted, and allowed to grow.